good. Time's 9 o'clock, so we will go ahead and start the meeting. On our first agenda item is BCBA job/duties description presented by Bethany Clark and Diallo.
You're good. Okay. So I put a handout on where you're sitting. We have behavior interventionists. So what came to me was the difference between behavior interventionists. There's some over there. But there's a difference between what a BCBA does and what a behavior interventionist does. So we have, if you remember back in the fall, we presented that we have behavior interventionists in the building. These are people who have a teaching degree, who have then received some type of specialized training, who help with students in the building. Then we have some district level people who typically have some type of specialty, trauma, PBIS, and then we have a regular ed BCBA, which is a board certified behavioral analyst. And that is when, and we'll kind of get through, I'll go through the slides, but we kind of bring them in with our more intensive students. And then we also have a BCBA. We have 2 BCBAs on the SPED side, and I will let Diallo speak to them.
Matt is here, and he'll be able to answer some questions as we go on. So he is one of our BCBAs on the special education side. We also have Michelle Carpentieri, and she tends to do more of our programming classrooms, and he's really handling special education in the rest of the district for those students that need that service.
So in the handout, you'll see there is kind of a main component, which is the job description of the behavior interventionist. So that's kind of what they do in the regular ed world. And I'll let you read through that. And then there are a couple handouts about what the learning was for our BIs this year. They've read the reset process as a book study. And then we focused really heavily on tiers 1 and tiers 2 in behavior and applying that in our building. And then, so there's a slide where it kind of talks about where they fall in those tiers 1, 2, and 3. On slide 9 is what I'm going to focus on today. This kind of runs through our process and where everybody fits in that process. So when you have tier 1, there's a student that is identified by the teacher, because that is your first point of contact. And then your building BI is going to work through our 8 effective practices of teaching and learning, doing fidelity checks for sure on practices 1 through 4, to make sure that the students are engaged, that there is a 4-to-1 positive reinforcement. We will have the building BI observe. They will collaborate with the teacher, and then the teacher will collect data for a minimum of 5 days. Sometimes it's longer than that, so that we can start a process. We have to have data to identify, is it a time of day, is it a particular subject, and what the true identifying behavior is. The team will reconvene. This works for about 6 weeks. The BI supports the teacher. They might put in a targeted tier 1 plan, identifying a more specific strategy to implement, such as a 2x10, which is where they meet with the kid for 2 minutes every day for 10 days, and they discuss only what the student wants to talk about that is appropriate. So we might implement that strategy, and then they'll track data for about 6 weeks, depending upon what the behavior is. The team reconvenes. If the student is making progress, they continue to move forward. If the student is not making progress, then they move to a tier 2. And this is where the buildings will contact a district level BI when they're looking at moving to a tier 2. There are some buildings that the building BI is very versed in tier 2, and so they will just continue and write the tier 2 plan and move into tier 2. But if the BI is concerned, we have that district level support. If a student has an IEP, and in that IEP, we are already addressing behavioral goals or behavioral minutes, then they will contact the special education department, and that is where Matt comes in on that side, because that student has already received a lot of support previously, and it might mean some other outside of regular ed things need to happen.
I'll jump in there too. So if we already have a student that has an IEP and we're starting to see a lot of behaviors come up, then also our process consultants can reach out at that point, and Matt later on can talk a little more about that, but reach out and there's a process then to start looking at behavior to see if we need to adjust the IEP to add some behavior goals.
So if it's determined the child needs to move to tier 2, the team reconvenes. The BI will write a success plan, sometimes with the help of the district level BI. Sometimes the district BI will write that success plan with the team. It's all done collaboratively with the classroom teacher, the counselor, the social worker, the building administrator, anybody that would work with that student. Will collect the data, meet, create a more targeted plan. And we will collect and track data for about 4 weeks on that plan before meeting again. Sometimes 6, depending upon what has happened. But 4 to 6 weeks. If the child continues to not make progress, then we need to look at conducting what's called a functional behavioral assessment, which is where we're trying to identify what the function of that behavior is. And on the regular education side, our BCBA does that. So if the tier 2 team meets and they have tried several interventions and the student's behavior is still not improved, they will reach out to the BCBA on the regular side to possibly conduct an FBA. Usually they'll come in and do an observation, they'll look at all the plans, they'll look at all the data, and they'll meet with the team to make that decision. And so then that leads us into tier 3. Tier 3, after the FBA, we will write a very targeted success plan for the student. Usually the BCBA will do that. She will go in and she will help train staff members. She will help train people that are going to work with the student. And then they review that data monthly. And if at that point in time the student is still not making progress, then oftentimes we bring in a special ed component of the side of things to look at the child with an even deeper lens. And then I will introduce these people. We have Julie Dillon, she is the building BI at Pullman. Amanda Durbin is the building BI at Edison, and then Angie Clausen is the district BI, specializing in tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, PBIS. And Matt. I looked past him, I'm sorry, and this is Matt, and he is the BCBA for the special education department.
Yeah, so Matt actually had worked on the regular ed side prior. He did come back to us, and now he is on the special ed side, so he kind of has seen both and works well with the team. I would say that from a special education side, one of our goals this year was to make sure that we're not missing anyone. Like, that's a fear of mine. I think that as a administrator now, that is something, and a teacher, we always worry, like, is somebody falling through the cracks? So poor Matt, I'm always like, what about this kid? But with spreadsheets, we check on, we keep track of students through, of course, collaboration between both groups, but then also sending out forms to the buildings and to say, hey, do you have any concerns? We went through a list at the beginning of the year to ensure if there were any students that they had concerns about that maybe we weren't aware of, just to make sure. And then have been working through those processes to make sure their IEPs matched what their needs were and processes and procedures were in place. And so Matt's been working really hard on that. So I don't know if we want to open it up to these guys, because they can share their jobs and kind of how they work together, or if there's questions or however you guys want to.
Yeah. Would you guys like to add anything to the conversation?
Along with the plans that we do, we also do crisis response. So if we have a student that's having some problems with self-regulation, they're not able to work in the classroom successfully, we will either respond to the classroom, push in the classroom, and try to help them be successful there, or we will take them out of the classroom, help them self-regulate, get back in control and calm, and then we'll either push in with them once we get in there to make sure that we're staying at that green zone nice and calm, or we just check it. So that's also part of what we do.
I do a lot of different observations and assistance with teachers at that tier 1 level with those 8 essential features, making sure that they have that strong classroom management, because that will lead to the success of the academics, and that's what we're looking for. Doing a lot of SEL work, social emotional learning, teaching our students self-regulation skills, We've kind of done a lot of different Wednesday morning meetings at Edison, and it's kind of been my baby to help with that and teach the students different skills so that they, whenever they're in their classroom and they're frustrated, like today, first day of math testing, what can I do? Oh, I remember I learned I can take a deep breath, I can ask for a break, I can do these different things, and so that they're not disrupting the learning and testing of all their other peers.
I work a lot in the non-title buildings who don't have VI on staff, helping that team implement tier 1 strategies, tier 2 plans, and then consult with in tier 2 and 3 with buildings who do have behavior interventionists, both at the elementary and middle school level. We have a member on our team is doing breakfast in the brain with small groups of kids who need regular regulation help. And those meetings occur once a week in different elementary buildings. And then we also go in and pull and work one-on-one with kids in those non-title buildings who don't have additional support to help them out.
Angie has a lot of years of experience, so she's also been very instrumental in our alternative school planning.
Does anybody have any questions, or Matt, did you want to chime in at all?
Not really. I would say the difference is they're like a well-oiled machine on their end, and SPED we're kind of different. So we're always, because we have the privilege of kind of coming into schools, for a specific kid, we get to look at the whole school kind of through a different lens that way. And so we also sometimes will identify students who are struggling behaviorally and trying to figure out why that is, while working with a team and not taking charge, but trying to guide that team on maybe where they need to be. I would say really out of like, if you're going to take just a snapshot of where we're at currently in our district as far as behaviors go, we're seeing a couple things. One, social emotional learning. Our guys do not have the proper behavior in order to make friends. We could probably identify most of our students right now and be able to manage and eliminate problem behavior if they had at least 5 friends, is how I see it in the classroom. Because they don't have the skill set to do it. And so what we see is there's an aggression, and then they hit, kick, get kicked off the bus, do these other things because they're providing this like, I'm the funny guy, but I'm also physical because I see that too. So if they just had 5 friends, if that was their goal, we would see reduced problem behaviors. So that's the first thing. Second thing is we don't have students who know how to be students. COVID hurt us, like it hurt bad. And so during that time, we don't know how to raise our hand and ask for an adult by their name. We don't know how to ask for a friend properly in the lunch line to get their attention. Also just having screens and then having our instruction, that's also something kind of new to this COVID era. They're used to multitasking, and when we want our students to focus, we're very streamlined on having a school perspective on it, and a lot of students aren't handling it. We can identify also students that are like eloping the classroom. We know as soon as a child is eloping outside of the classroom that it's going to need a wraparound support, because that's not a normal behavior for a child. They should have all the good stuff within the buildings, and even going inside the classrooms, our teachers are pretty fantastic. So like, they get down to the level, instruction is bright and fun, you know, they're doing all this stuff, and still we have children that when stress becomes too high, they start running around the building. And so that should be a big like red alert for us, and so that's where it takes kind of a team approach. Is this a special education? Is this a social emotional? Is this a learning to learn? And we just missed our pre-K skills, which now we're elaborating those pre-K buildings. Or does it need all the team? The wraparound support, counseling, and so on and so forth. So that's kind of.
And I love your perspective of, you know, it's social emotional, so hopefully in the intervention, in the alternative school, we can put something in place to help them grow those social emotional skills, and maybe something around developing friends and stuff like that. That way, we're not just not throwing them away, but putting them to the side and not really tapping into what their problems are. So, thank you so much, Nat.
Yeah, sure.
Could I ask, so this seems like very intense, and I have to say I just read an article where it says loneliness is a national health crisis.
Yeah.
So it's like adults too, so I mean I can readily see why that would be with children because the adults are lonely too. So, but this seems like very intensive. How many kids, maybe this is unfair to ask, how many kids in the district need these types of services? How big a problem is this?
So this is about our data that we have currently, okay?
Yeah.
So if we were to take our data, which I believe we have a really powerful tool with like Power School, with the logs that we're able to see and actually see how many times our students are not only written up for problem behavior, but also really access to an administrator directly because they're having some type of behavior that's maladaptive to the classroom, okay? So if we're taking a school like, I was just looking at this, so if we take a school like Lindbergh, and we look at the month of April, for every kid that's been written up 3 times or more, we can see that there's 37 kids that were written up 3 times or more in the month of April. Well, those are 37 kids to start with, to say that they're probably missing out on some social emotional ready-to-learn skills that we could start doing. And that's just one school. So if you imagine you have that many kids in each school, that's a pretty big number.
So I know with the early childhood emphasis that the school district is now, do you think that that will, well, this is probably unfair, help in the future because?
So if I also worked in pre-K, so if I could jump in on this, our pre-K program is top-notch. I mean, it just is. The classroom environment that they're teaching when it comes to integrated classrooms within pre-K is probably what our kindergartners need, first graders and second graders. There's a time where what they're doing is learning how to deal with stress with peer interaction. That's exactly what our kids are needing when we talk about social emotional and about making friends. Teachers guide that process, but they don't instruct the process. So we have the model already in St. Joe, which is the exciting part. We're expanding that, and then on top of that, if we can push that into elementary school, we've got a real good thing going.
I'm just a community member, and my question is, how much interaction or information is given to any parents of these children? Are they aware, are the parents aware? I mean, I'm sure they are, and I realize some of that is there might not be an adult parent, you know, to be involved, but I'm just wondering, is there, because children model what they see at home, and if the parents aren't able to communicate well and all those kinds of things, is there anything we're doing to pull in or to assist the parents? I know that's not, you're to educate the children, but it's a package deal, really.
Yeah, and that might be Angie or one of you guys might talk about
Yeah,
that.
we involve the district team, we involve parents at the tier 2 level. Tier 1 is typically anything that can be done for any child within the classroom. Tier 2 goes for a specific group of kids, and once a student gets to a tier 2 level, the team brings the parent to the table, just like they would in an IEP or a 504 meeting, to be aware of what's happening. They often receive daily data reports, so they know if the student is meeting their daily goal that we set. So that communication is wide open at the tier 2 and then tier 3 levels.
And to make sure that we're having that open conversation. Hey, what works at home for you guys? If this works at home, are we able to try that here? Hey, we see this works at school. How about you try this at home? So we can really bridge that gap. And then also the data reports home with the parents too, so they're able to see, oh wow, it looks like lunch is a really tricky time for my child, or that special time is really kind of a tricky area across a lot of buildings. It's structured, unstructured time where they get to be out of their classroom, moving around, but there's still expectations and things that they must follow, but it's still tricky. So it just is having that open communication that I can pick up my phone and say, hey, I just wanted to keep you updated, or the best is when you get to give that positive phone call home, or watch the kid run out to their parent at the end of the day. I had a wonderful day. I got to do X, Y, Z, so just keeping those lines of
And for our
communication.
tier 3 kids, if they come up to tier 3 and then they're seen by BCBA, after we get done with the functional behavior assessment, we write a behavior intervention plan, and we sit down with the IEP, on my side, we sit down with the IEP team, and the parents, of course, involved with that. One of the first questions we say, is this what you're seeing at home? That's the beginning of the dialogue, to then say, these are strategies that not only can our staff use within this behavior intervention plan, but this is a great place for us to have replacement behaviors starting to be taught at home. And we know that the effectiveness of that is going to be low because they've got a lot on their plate,
Sure.
but we do know it's at least a starting point of giving them actual concrete steps that they can do towards behavior improvement.
The other thing we do, we really wrap around our students that are having those issues. So we have social workers at some schools that are full-time, some part-time. We have family guidance that we also wrap around. That family guidance also is in contact with the parents. We share our data. We need to share our data with them so they have that data as a parent, as family guidance, as a release form, and we can even share that with the doctor. So we really wrap around the best way we can to work as a team to help the student be successful.
And our counselors are pretty, and we have some of the best counselors, and they are full of resources. So if a parent comes in and they really do need help, we have counselors. There's also CAP workers from the community that come in that can provide that extra layer of support, and we do have social workers as well. So we have kind of a network to help give parents resources if they need resources, in addition, as long as, and keeping them as part of the team.
I'm going to go back also that if a student is written up and they have a log entry in PowerSchool, the teacher should have already communicated that or will be communicating that with the parent. So that's our very first, I mean, there should be a lot of positive communication going on also, but if a student does get a log entry, at least at the elementary, I can speak mostly about elementary, just because that's where my experience has been mostly. But there should be a phone call home, an email, some form of, if they use the Remind app, some form of communication happening. So it's not a surprise that their student then
That's my
has
concern,
had-
that, parents are just in the dark and they don't know what's happening with their kids, so.
Yeah, and so that kind of opens that dialogue of, hey, this is what's going on regularly, let's see, and then there can be a referral to MTSS and kind of a plan started if they start to see a pattern. So that's why looking at our log entries is a very valuable tool to see from the administrator, but then also at the district level to see like where are hot spots, what kind of support do the buildings need.
Because the preference is to not get to level 3.
Oh, yeah, no,
That's the goal.
We're hoping the
So
intervention is
that's
gonna
how-
bring it back down, so we're
Yeah.
hoping tier 2 intervention is gonna bring it back down to 1. And so it doesn't continue.
We try to graduate them out of that, so we work up to this, we build to this, and then we take steps to try to graduate them out. If we can't graduate them out, then we move to tier 3, do what we can there, then we evolve.
And also to be clear with the tier system, the beauty of it is if you have the right team and the right model in place, that those who need tier 3 get it quicker. So now they're not having to go through this gradual process, and maybe it's 16 weeks that they're getting, we can identify that early, give them the skills they need right away, early intervention, and then they're ready to excel on it, and then we can lower that tier 2, tier 1. So that's also a benefit of the team.
Well, it's the benefit of teamwork.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
Now,
You can all do it.
We collaborate a lot together. I mean, I had Matt over with me several times. We collaborate as a team. Somebody might have a different strategy that they can try that maybe I haven't tried. So that teamwork collaboration effort is what helps us to get our kids where they need to be.
How long has this system been in place in the district? And is it in high schools too, or?
yeah, so Bethany, do you want to?
Yeah, so I think, oh gosh, 4, maybe 5 years ago was when they first introduced a behavior interventionist into the district. I've been here 3 years. When I came, there wasn't much of a system at all. It was kind of hodgepodgey. Everybody was kind of doing their own thing, and so I've spent 3 years kind of really working closely with Michelle and Matt and Angie Clausen and building kind of, this is what we want, this is the structure, this is the framework, and then training that with our BIs. And then this year we've really brought in our building administrators to retrain with our building administrators. So we kind of built the ship while we were sailing, and so it took a lot of work, but so I would say this is probably the first year that I felt like this was a good cohesive team and that everybody kind of knew what they were doing and where they were going. But it's taken about 3 years. We've had BIs for 4, and then we've just kind of adapted and morphed. And I mean, it's always good to look at your data and figure out where your hole is and then figure out how to fix that hole so that you can make things work more efficient. And I'll tell you, there's things that probably still need to be changed.
But this is in high school too?
It is not at the
So
high
it is
school.
in the grades, so working, okay.
Yeah, so it started really elementary and then has this year kind of moved into the middle school, and then I don't know.
We have a BI at all 4 middle schools this year we do, and the model looks different there. Each side looks a little bit different how they're utilized. And Lafayette had one with title dollars the previous year. And so that's how they chose to spend it. So there. But it looks different at the middle level as far as how they're utilizing them, the effectiveness of it.
But they're still using the tier 1, 2, 3 system.
Sure.
Great conversation. Anybody have any more questions?
So have we ever done a professional development day with the teachers?
We do professional development at the beginning of the year and then throughout the year. So sometimes we do it with our whole staff, and we're doing professional development that we've also led a lot with trauma. A lot of our kids have had significant trauma as well. So we've really merged that this year, and Nancy can talk more on that. We also, when we do our observations and go around and talk to teachers need help, then we have a coaching type model. And we go in and work with the teacher, model with the teacher, help them practice those skills. So we basically do professional development throughout the whole year, some as a whole group and some one-on-one with the teacher.
We've had several sessions at the Engage Summit in September, and I can't remember the name of. Accelerate
Yeah.
in February. That teachers from all over the district can come to the different sessions that we offer.
They're usually full. And I've been a teacher for a long time, in the system for a long time, and the amount of trauma that is showing up now is significantly more than we had before.
So we probably need to expand your group.
We wouldn't disagree.
I'm sure.
The need is there, and it will continue to be there.
And Angie did a fabulous job of onboarding our new teachers, spent an evening with our new teachers and some learning to support them as well, so.
And I do have to say, having a building with some new teachers, they're eager to learn and are constantly coming, what can I do to help this student? I want them to succeed. What do I need to do? They want them in their classrooms. They want them with their peers. So what can I do to become better, to help that student become better?
That's a huge bonus because you're also coming alongside for classroom management. And a lot of times that's the key,
Right.
you know, to get them early. But, and a lot don't utilize that part of their teaching, where that's really valuable.
Kim, and that is why we spent a lot of time this year really leading up the 8 effective practices across their team and on the instructional coach team, so that we're speaking the same language. It's not 2 separate things, we're one. If you don't have solid tier 1 instruction, that's when behaviors tend to boil up. And so they have played an intricate, I have a team of 10, and they have played an intricate role in leading up that tier 1 instruction with those 8 effective practices.
We frequently work in tandem, and we'll both go in and observe together. I'll observe the first 4, they'll observe the last 4, we'll talk together, work as a team, and meet together.
Great.
We had a great learning experience with one of our newer teachers this past week who was able to go to another building and observe a teacher who's a veteran teacher who's amazing with the help of the instructional coaches. The instructional coach and I collaborated on it. The teacher came to me and said, "This was amazing. I can't wait to implement all these new things next year." And she said, "Can you help guide me?" I said, "Absolutely." And so
that
it
raises
was,
her level of enjoying in the classroom.
it was a wonderful experience for her, and she was beaming and eager to implement all new things. So it was just a great full circle moment for her with the work of both the behavioral side and the academic side coming together and see her, this is going to be a great year next year and finish out the year strong.
Thank you guys so much for the work you do. Okay, so we are moving on to item 2, which is academic services goals 2023 to 2024. Dr. McKee.
I'll give them just a minute. I left a handout at your tables. This is also posted online on the agenda if you want to refer back to that later if you don't have a copy. Our team spent a lot of time talking about our goals for next year in the format of our goals. So we really felt like it was best if we aligned all of our goals directly to the APR report. And so we'll go through this, but just so you know, a lot of this language is going to be right from the APR report, which I think is going to help us all have focus moving forward for next year. So goal 1, increase academic achievement status and growth on state ELA, science, math, social studies assessments to an on-track designation. So that academic achievement status, that is how the student performs on that assessment. Growth is obviously then moving from one level to the next. So we do get points even if we're moving a kid from below basic to basic. In the past, we've had, and we want to increase our proficiency by 5%, which didn't really have that focus on growth. And so since that is a piece of our APR, we are moving that goal. So it's just kind of shifted to represent both how students perform and their individual growth. That on-track designation, again, is the wording from our APR report, if you refer back to that. And so we just put some action steps in here as to what's going to lead us to meet that goal. So the first one, expansion of early learning opportunities. And the second one, Stacia and her team have developed a lesson plan framework, and they are currently working on look-fors in the classroom, which our teachers and administrators have been asking for weeks and months. And so I think that's going to be helpful to coach our teachers. And then the last one is coaching and feedback through NEED, which is our platform we use to evaluate teachers, and then also through our instructional coaches who are in all of our buildings. Goal number 2, district attendance will improve to above 80%. We've been stuck at about 77% all year. I'm hopeful that will go up in April with us changing our procedures and how we handle the 20-plus days. Our action steps for that one, we are revising the attendance policy for next year. We've heard a lot of feedback about when students miss over 8 days and then they're at jeopardy of losing credit. If that occurs in October, November, then a lot of our students, especially at the high school level, are shutting down and they're giving up. And so we are revising that, and we'll no longer be taking away any credit. Students will just have to make up time. The second one is monthly collaboration with the juvenile office and the prosecuting attorney. Dr. Lau and I have been doing that regularly just so that we are touching base with those two offices on our referrals for kids who are chronically absent. And then the last one is returning to our Strive for 5 campaign for next year. Goal number 3, success-ready students will improve from approaching to an on-track designation. The action steps for that, we need all of our students to have what is called a CCR assessment. That can be either the work keys, the ACT, or the ASVAB. Last Thursday, we met with principals and Dr. Lau went through a data dive with our administrators so they could see how many points we get for each of those assessments depending on where a student scores. And then all students will have an ICAP that actually falls under the counseling center, but it's all on our APR report, so we want to have focus on that area as well. And then expansion of Hilliard Technical Center, that's already in the works. And then number 4, graduate follow-up will improve from on-track to a MET designation. So I don't know if we're aware of that, but all of our high school counselors and administrators, they have to follow up with our graduates after they graduate and find out what they are doing. Are they working? Are they deployed? Are they in the military? And sometimes that can be difficult to track down those students. I know at the high school level, they use some creative ways to get a hold of those graduates. It may be through a sibling or a friend who is still in the building. Sometimes they even turn to social media to reach out to parents. And so we're going to work with our high schools in that regard to make sure we go from on track to the next level, which is MET. Goal number 4, graduation rate will improve from 77.6% to above 80%. We believe the revised attendance policy will assist in that department. And then number 2, establish and maintain community partnerships to provide relevant and unique educational pathways. That's something we're in the process of doing now. And I'm sure you guys all saw Hilliard has the apprenticeship program. So that's just one example of an individualized pathway for a student. I think we have to be super creative when we have our kids at Hilliard and making sure that we are meeting their needs because most of them are going to be hands-on learners.
We just came from, how many, 7? becoming teachers.
Yes.
That's the goal.
We need
So
them.
it was neat to say that graduation.
Sign them up now.
Yeah,
We need
it
them.
was. It was pretty good.
That is good. And then goal number 5 is all about climate and culture. We use the Gallup Poll Q12 score, which you guys know we exceeded that this year at 37%. We want to maintain that though, and the industry standard is 34%, which I know sounds low, but don't think of that on a 0 to 100% scale. And then the action steps for that. This is new this year. We want all of our buildings to create and implement a positive climate and culture building plan. And so those things could be anything from recognizing our students, to recognizing our staff, to celebrating, yesterday was Principal's Day, we have a Bus Driver Appreciation Day, so all of those things are important. And I think when you have one school doing it and another school not doing it, they talk. And so we want to make sure that all of our buildings have a plan. And we're going to help our administrators do that through a work session in June. And then the last piece of goal number 5 is implementation of social emotional learning. And you kind of heard our BIs talk a little bit about that this morning. Right now that looks differently throughout the buildings. So some of our buildings have Character Strong curriculum. We all have the old VAES, which is an anti-bullying program curriculum that we use. But most buildings are doing things a little bit differently. And so our hope is to streamline that. And I've been working with Stacia, who's been really waiting for the final word from DESE to put out an SEL curriculum. So once we have that, we will be moving forward with a streamlined curriculum for our district. And then down at the bottom, we felt like this would be helpful for not only our administrators, but our teachers, so that they know the focus for our PD. So the K through 5 focus will be, it's called UFly, and that's a literacy approach. And then we also have Literacy Studio, and of course letters training, which has been highly pushed from DESE. And at the secondary level, we're focusing on clarity and visible learning, as well as professional learning communities. You may hear that as PLCs. And then next year will be our 3rd year for the 3D Institute, and that is going to be a K-12 approach. We're still working out the details of what that's going to look like for all of our staff. And then every building has their own professional development plan with their own action steps that will be based on that individual building's needs. So I'd be happy to have any questions, but we're pretty proud of this work just because it's very streamlined with the APR report, and I think it will help us be more intentional of those goals. So, any questions?
So do we have a percent goal that we're shooting for in goal 1?
No, that is aligned strictly to this APR report. So if you look at our APR report, like right now, ELA, academic achievement status was approaching. And so we want to move that to the next level, which is on track. And so, because when we tell our buildings we want 5% proficiency, well, really we want the kids who are in below basic to also grow to basic. There's huge point gains if we can do that. So that's why we've used this language in the APR report, just to keep it all common language for everybody.
I do like that every building gets to come up with its own, because they're each unique.
They are.
The students within them are unique.
Very much
with that
so.
building environment.
Especially when you have title buildings, non-title buildings, the needs are different.
Yeah.
And we have to be responsive to that.
Did I hear earlier this day is the first day of map testing?
Yesterday was.
Yesterday was, okay.
Some of the map testing for the general population, our department has been map testing for a while, so if you've been hearing about map testing, that would be the only thing. The ELD has been map testing already, because it takes us a little longer.
Yeah, all of our buildings kicked off yesterday. Anything else as far as goals?
Alright, so we're going to move on to our 3rd item of the agenda, which is K through 2 literacy.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Garcia. And it kind of just piggybacks off Dr. McGinnis here. So I'm thankful that the state finally is making movements here in literacy learning. And so really there's 4 big I call initiatives that they're asking districts to look at, which then will drive our professional learning at a K-5 lens. And so this blue sheet here, or this handout here, this comes from the Missouri Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. And what you'll see there in the reading of this is a little arrow, and the arrow indicates DESE's wording. And then underneath there, you'll see a St. Joe response, like what are we doing to initiate the response? And so the big initiative that the state has been on is the Scholarships for Professional Learning for K-5. And y'all hear the word letters. I hate acronyms in education, but LETTERS really stands for Language Essentials for Teachers of Reading and Spelling. So when you hear LETTERS, just know it has something to do with language and the science of reading. And so what the St. Joe response is. This year we did have a group go through LETTERS learning. It was very, some buildings didn't get to send some teachers because the learning occurred when our teachers were in session. Some of our buildings struggle with substitutes, getting substitutes. And so what I said was to our Northwest Regional Professional Development Center, here's our problem in St. Joe. It's not just St. Joe, it's all over Missouri, but we can't get our teachers out for the learning. So will you partner with us? And they agreed to partner with us. And so in the partnership, what they have done is all of their learning days now will happen on our district professional learning days. So the days that we were already out for district professional learning, our teachers are out. It's not going to impact classroom instruction. Our teachers get to go to the learning. It's still an opt-in model because it is a lot of work. I've completed volume 1. There are assessments that you have to do with this piece. It's a lot of, it's a big commitment. And so we did have 42 educators enroll in volume 1, and I'm proud to say that we have a lot of the schools that typically couldn't send teachers now get to send our teachers. And so then we have 24 educators that are continuing in volume 2. And so that means they completed volume 1 this year. See how that number is small? It was only 24 that were in volume 1. This year it's almost a double, like about the educators that have decided to opt in here. What we also did as a response to this is we trained up one of our instructional coaches to be an in-house consultant. And so there's some special certification that you obtain, which required a lot on Cambry, but she is trained and receiving certification that she can teach teachers letters, that we don't depend on just Northwest RPDC, that we also have somebody in district, in-house, that can support the work of our principals, that can support the work of our teachers, and the learning. And so she'll be kind of that co-champion. We're kind of looking at instructional coaches as you'll have this champion goal. And so this will be her champion goal is ensuring the fidelity work with letters. So the supporting of that work. And then our continuing professional learning for principals along with observation walkthrough tool to support that work with letters. And it goes to what Dr. McGinnis was saying about look-fors. What does it need to look like as a principal when I walk in to see the work with letters? And so UMKC, their RPDC, is offering their learning with our principals. And so we're sending principals down and an instructional coach. And then we're going to bring the walkthrough back and then train up all of our principals in that walkthrough. So that's the response to letters. The other initiative they have is evidence-based reading instructional materials. DESE is supposed to publish criteria and examples to help support districts and schools select and use evidence-based reading curricular and instructional materials. And so I'm waiting on that list still. They're a little slow. But what we want to do is, I've already had lots of discussion with teachers. We would like to establish a consistent Tier 1 Science of Reading program in K-1-2. So everybody across the district is leading the same approach on the Science of Reading. I have been following lots of data with the help of Dr. Lau here on what's working and what's not working. And so the University of Florida, the one that Dr. McGinnis has alluded to, is showing lots of positive movement. And the work with the University of Florida, the Literacy Institute piece, it's a script. And so you will get a curricular book. It will lay out day one, this is what you're supposed to do in the science of reading approach. And it'll give teachers the materials and understanding to teach in small group and whole group reading instruction. With the turnover of classroom teachers that we're seeing, we need to support our new teachers, and I don't want them just fumbling. And so, not knowing what they need to do. And this curricular resource, you just open up and it's self-paced. So we are hosting them for learning in the implementation of this. And it is a one-day learning. It's not like a 5 or 6 day learning. And so it's a one day of implementation, how to implement this. This is a script, right? You just have to, there's some processes and background of reading that they want to onboard those teachers with too. So then what we hope to happen is implement with fidelity the evidence-based reading instructional materials, and then district and building leaders and instructional coach champion will monitor and progress that data. So Heather Wiedmer will be the co-champion. She's a guru at K1-2 work in the science of reading, and so she is leading that up. This fourth one, this third one here, this is not, I will say, this is not bolded. This is not a DESE one. So the 3rd through 5th grade teachers participate in professional development and literacy instruction. Here's, in our data, we are seeing that we do need to support upper elementary in their work of literacy instruction. And so when you go and you look at 4th grade particularly and 5th grade, we do need to support our teachers in that work. And so what we would love to do is to really just talk, what Dr. McGinnis said is lead professional learning and better practices for literacy instruction and establish common practices and look-fors in Tier 1 reading instruction. And so when a principal walks in the room, right, they have the look-fors of what we should see. But we're also teaching our teachers what those look-fors are. Our teachers don't know sometimes. We had 116 first and second year teachers that we were leading up. And so when I stepped into this role and started working at the elementary level, and you ask a teacher at 3rd, 4th, and 5th, and 6th grade in some of the elementary, what is your typical literacy block of instruction looks like? It's all over the place in our district. And so we need to streamline what those look-fors need to be for our teachers and our principals. And then really implement with fidelity the framework and a common structure for literacy instruction. And so that's going to be the work of Literacy Studio that you see there on our professional learning on our academic service goals. And Jessica Weaver, who we're adding to the team as our instructional coach, will be the champion of that work. The last two are pretty simple. One of them is Dr. Wiles administered a DESE-approved literacy assessment. And what DESE did was said, here are the 5 assessments platforms that we want districts to use. And we are blessed, Curriculum Associates, iReady is one of the 5 approved. And we're going to just continue to provide professional learning opportunities on implementing assessments and interpreting the resulting data. And all of our instructional coaches this year, and Jessica Weaver, who we're adding next year, have all had lots and lots of learning on iReady. We are planning on bringing curriculum associates to our new teacher learning in August, and so that our new teachers are on board and understand iReady as well. And the reading success plan. Okay, develop a reading success plan that includes intensive interventions for a student who exhibits a substantial deficiency in reading. This is a DESE piece, right? What we would like to do as an academic service team is a consistent St. Joseph School District reading success plan and talk about some of the strategies and lead intensive interventions for students who exhibit deficiencies in reading and connect with parents and guardians that can support the child at the home. And then continue, this is, as a result of the Senate bill, notify parents and/or guardians in writing about the deficiencies immediately upon determination and with each quarterly progress report. So that's the work of really our K-5, which I'm excited to say is we are being proactive in approaches to literacy instruction in our district.
And do you anticipate this would help our reading scores?
I am hopeful and yes, absolutely. If we can shore up our tier 1 instruction and get everybody to work as one team with our layers of intervention that we have, we'll see success in student outcomes with reading results. So.
Thank you.
Does the instructional materials include lesson plans?
Yeah, it does, and that's what the state has, I shared with the whole academic service team. The first webinar was just put out on Friday, this past Friday. I'd be happy to share that with you guys on where the state is working, and they are doing a series of 3 webinars. And the first one tended to focus more on letters learning, a little bit about the Reading Success Plan. They're going to get more involved on the evidence-based reading instructional materials. Bless you, Lara. I don't think, I kind of wonder if they'll just give districts a rubric with the reading instructional materials, and then districts will be able to make the decision. So I know that Dr. Lau was so proactive in the approaches because many districts were not giving a K-1-2 literacy assessments, and we have been for some time. And so that is something that's not new to us. We assess our students in K-1-2 literacy instruction in the Tier 1 through the use of iReady. So I am anxious to see what they're going to share about the evidence-based reading instructional materials.
So you already have this particular curriculum chosen, and you're moving forward.
Yeah, I can't wait on the state. You know what I mean? So you're waiting. At the University of Florida, we have a lot of momentum from our teachers. It seems to be the right fit for our district right now.
Okay. Are you familiar with something called Foundations and Frameworks?
Yes, absolutely.
I know that was implemented at St. Joseph Christian School, and they've had really good success with that.
Right.
So just putting that out there.
Thank you.
This falls through, and
Yeah, we have studied Orton Gillingham. We have studied Pathways. We used Pathways for some time.
I'm sure there's a plethora of options.
The issue with University of Florida, their Literacy Institute, and Heather could speak to it more than I can, but it's whole group. It works in Tier 1 instruction. It's not a layer of intervention so that you want your K-1-2 students to go through it, your readers to go through it. And again, guys, we are struggling with retention. And so if this is a curricular piece that we can lead up teachers in professional learning one day with the professional, and then support through instructional coaching and principal work, this seems to be a good fit. And I do have some teachers, I've met with lots and lots of teachers, a team. Dr. Adams and I met with the champions, some teacher groups that were seeing lots of movement in data with reading instruction with University of Florida Literacy Institute. So.
Well, thank you so much for your work. I know it's hard to train new teachers every year since we are having that retention issue, but you're doing great. Does anyone have any more questions? Kenny, do you have any questions?
Thank you.
All right, then I will go ahead and call this meeting adjourned. Thank you so much for